stop everything you're doing right now. I'm not kidding. Close your laptop, put your phone down, cancel your next meeting if you have to, because what I'm about to reveal in the next 50 minutes will either completely transform your life or haunt you for the rest of your existence. Have you ever wondered why some people have everything but lose it all? Why brilliant minds create their own destruction? Why successful people's children become failures? I used to think I had all the answers. Until 3 months ago, when I discovered this story that kept me awake for 7 straight nights. This isn't just any story. This is about a man who was literally worshipped by kings. A genius so brilliant that emperors would walk hundreds of miles just to hear one sentence from him. He had wealth that could buy kingdoms, fame that reached every corner of the known world, knowledge that could solve any problem. But here's what will shock you to your core. This same man, this living legend, made one tiny mistake, one small oversight, one moment of negligence, and it destroyed everything. Not just his career, not just his money, everything. His family was torn apart. His son became a criminal who would rather steal than work. His wife died of heartbreak. His reputation was shattered so badly that people spat when they heard his name. And here's the part that gave me chills. He could have prevented all of this with just 15 minutes a day. 15 minutes! But wait, it gets worse. Before he died, this brilliant man wrote a book. Not just any book. A book that contained the secret to unlimited success, happiness, and wealth. The formula that could turn any failure into massive success. He gave this priceless treasure to his son, his last gift, his final attempt to save what was left of their relationship. But here's the tragic twist that will break your heart. His son threw it away. Actually threw it away because he couldn't read it. He'd never learned to read properly because he'd wasted his entire youth hanging out with the wrong people. So picture this. A man dies holding the solution to every problem his son would ever face. The son inherits this solution but can't access it. He spends the rest of his life in poverty, begging on streets, while carrying the key to infinite wealth in his pocket. Now, before you think this is just another ancient fairy tale, let me ask you something that might make you uncomfortable. Right now, at this very moment, how many people in your life are trying to get your attention? How many times today did someone you love try to talk to you, but you were too busy, too focused on work, too consumed with your phone? And here's an even scarier question. What if the most important conversation of your life is the one you keep postponing? Because what happened to Master Hanks isn't happening in some distant past. It's happening right now, today, in millions of homes around the world. Successful parents losing their children to wrong influences because they're too busy building their careers. Brilliant minds creating family disasters while solving complex business problems. Teenagers getting into drugs, crime, and depression because their parents think providing money is the same as providing love. I'm not trying to scare you. Actually, yes I am, because sometimes fear is the only thing that wakes us up before it's too late. This story has 10 devastating parts, and I'm going to tell you all of them, but here's my promise. If you watch this entire video, if you don't skip ahead even once, I guarantee you'll understand something about life that most people never learn until they're on their deathbed. You'll discover the real reason why smart people make dumb mistakes. You'll learn the exact moment when success becomes a curse. And most importantly, you'll find out how to recognize if you're making the same deadly mistake that destroyed Master Hanks. But here's the catch. You have to stay till the very end, because the most important part of this story comes in the last 5 minutes. Miss that, and you'll miss the secret that could save your entire future. So here's my challenge. Turn off all distractions. This isn't background noise, this is a life intervention. And if at any point during this story you feel uncomfortable, if something hits too close to home, don't you dare click away. That discomfort is exactly what you need to feel. Ready? Because we're about to dive into one of the most powerful true stories ever told. This is the story of Master Hanks and the book that held the secret to life itself. But first, let me ask you to do something. Drop a fire emoji in the comments if you're committed to watching this entire video. I want to see how many people are serious about changing their lives today. Part 1. The Rise of a Legend. And now, let me take you back several centuries to witness the rise of the most respected man who ever lived. Picture this: a small village where most people can't even write their own names, poverty everywhere, ignorance ruling every decision. And in this darkness, a boy is born who would change everything. Master Hanks wasn't born into wealth. His father was a simple farmer who could barely feed his family. But young Hanks had something different in his eyes. A hunger for knowledge that consumed him completely. While other children played games, Hanks studied by candlelight until his eyes burned. While others slept, he memorized ancient texts. While others chased temporary pleasures, he chased eternal wisdom. By the age of 15, he could solve mathematical problems that confused grown men. By 20, he was writing philosophical treatises that amazed scholars. By 25, his reputation had spread across multiple kingdoms. But here's what made Master Hanks truly extraordinary. He didn't just learn knowledge, he created it. He wrote books that revolutionized how people thought about life, morality, and success. Kings started inviting him to their courts, not as entertainment, but as their most trusted advisor. Emperors would postpone wars just to consult with Master Hanks about strategy. Students traveled for months just to spend one day learning from him. They would sell everything they owned just to afford his teachings. And the money? Oh, the money flowed like rivers. Master Hanks became wealthy beyond imagination. But unlike other rich people, he didn't accumulate wealth for luxury. He accumulated it for one reason: to have the freedom to pursue knowledge without any distractions. Here's something incredible. Master Hanks was so respected that when he walked through any city, people would literally bow down. Shopkeepers would refuse to take money from him. Citizens would consider it an honor just to be acknowledged by him. He had achieved what every human being dreams of: ultimate success, universal respect, infinite wealth, and the power to influence the most powerful people in the world. But wait, there's something I haven't told you yet. Something that makes this story even more fascinating. Master Hanks had a secret philosophy that drove everything he did. He believed that human emotions were weaknesses. He thought that attachment to people, especially family, would dilute his focus and reduce his effectiveness. In his mind, he had transcended normal human limitations. He saw himself as pure intellect, unburdened by the messy complications of relationships. And this philosophy worked brilliantly for decades. He wrote faster, thought clearer, and achieved more than anyone in human history. His detachment from emotions gave him incredible analytical power. But here's what Master Hanks didn't realize. Here's the fatal flaw in his perfect system. He wasn't just avoiding distractions, he was creating a time bomb, a massive, devastating explosion that would destroy everything he'd built. Because while Master Hanks was busy becoming a legend, his family was quietly falling apart. And the most tragic part? He had no idea it was happening. But before I tell you about the destruction, let me ask you something. Have you ever been so focused on achieving something that you forgot about the people who supported you along the way? Have you ever been so busy climbing the ladder of success that you forgot to look down and see who you were stepping on? Because if you have, what happens next in this story will terrify you. Comment below if you've ever felt like your success was more important than your relationships. And be honest, this isn't a judgment, this is self-awareness. Part 2. The Invisible Destruction. Now let me introduce you to the real victim of this story. A little boy who just wanted his father's love. Jack wasn't a bad kid. Actually, he was brilliant, just like his father. He had the same curious eyes, the same hunger for knowledge, the same potential for greatness. But here's the heartbreaking part. Nobody ever noticed. Master Hanks was so consumed with his work that he barely acknowledged Jack's existence, not because he didn't love his son, but because he had convinced himself that his work was more important than anything else. Every morning, Jack would wake up excited to share something with his father, maybe a drawing he'd made, or a question about the world, or just a story from his day. And every morning, Master Hanks would give him the same response. "Not now, son. I'm working on something important." Do you know what that does to a child's mind? To be told repeatedly that you're less important than work. At first, Jack tried harder. He would study extra hard, hoping to impress his father with his intelligence. He would create art, thinking maybe creativity would get his attention. He would even pretend to be sick, just to see if his father cared enough to check on him. But Master Hanks was in his own world, a world where books were more real than people, where ideas mattered more than emotions, where legacy was more important than love. So Jack's mother tried to compensate. She saw her son's pain and tried to fill the void with extra affection. If Jack wanted something, she gave it to him immediately. If he didn't want to go to school, she let him stay home. If he made mistakes, she covered for him. She thought she was helping, but actually she was making everything worse. Because here's what happens when children get love without boundaries, affection without discipline, attention without respect. They become weak. They lose the ability to handle frustration. They start believing that the world owes them everything without effort. And that's exactly what happened to Jack. By age 12, he had stopped attending school regularly. Why? Because learning was hard, and at home, everything was easy. By age 14, he had started hanging out with older boys who had also given up on education. They would spend their days wandering around looking for easy entertainment. By age 16, these boys had introduced Jack to gambling. Just small bets at first. The thrill of winning easy money was intoxicating for a boy who had never learned the value of hard work. But here's how addiction works, folks. It never stays small. The bets got bigger. The risks got higher. And when Jack started losing, he needed to find money to pay his debts. That's when stealing began. It started with small things: a coin from his mother's purse, some food from a neighbor's kitchen, items that wouldn't be missed. But stealing, like gambling, has its own momentum. Small thefts lead to bigger thefts. Petty crime leads to serious crime. And soon Jack had joined a gang of professional thieves. Now here's the most tragic part of all this. Master Hanks, the man who could analyze the most complex philosophical problems, who could predict political outcomes, who could understand human nature better than anyone alive, had no idea what was happening in his own home. He was so focused on understanding the world that he completely missed understanding his son. Every day, Jack was slipping further into darkness. Every day he was moving closer to disaster. Every day the distance between father and son was growing. But Master Hanks was busy. He was writing his masterpiece. He was solving the problems of kings. He was building his legacy. He thought he had time. He thought family issues could wait. He thought his son would naturally turn out fine because he had good genetics and a comfortable life. He was wrong about everything. And the saddest part, Jack still loved his father. Even as he was destroying his own life, he still hoped that someday his father would notice him, would be proud of him, would spend just 1 hour talking to him about something other than work. But that day never came. Instead, something else happened. Something that would expose Jack's secret life in the most public, most humiliating way possible. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to think about your own life. Is there someone who's been trying to get your attention? Someone whose problems you've been too busy to notice? Someone who might be slipping away while you're focused on other things? Comment "wake-up call" if this part of the story made you think of someone specific in your life. Part 3. The night that changed everything. What I'm about to tell you happened on a night that started like any other, but ended with complete destruction. Jack and his criminal friends had been planning this for weeks. The old temple on the hill was famous for its valuable offerings: gold coins, silver ornaments, precious stones donated by wealthy devotees over the years. To Jack's gang, it looked like easy money. The temple was isolated, poorly guarded, and filled with treasures. But for Jack, this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about proving himself to the older criminals who still saw him as just a rich kid playing at being tough. That night, as Master Hanks worked late in his study, completely absorbed in his writing, his son was preparing to commit the crime that would destroy both their lives. The irony is devastating, folks. While the father was writing about morality and virtue, the son was planning to steal from a sacred place. While Master Hanks was crafting beautiful words about honor and integrity, Jack was betraying everything those words stood for. But here's what makes this even more heartbreaking. If Master Hanks had looked up from his books just once that evening, if he had noticed that Jack wasn't home, if he had asked one simple question about his son's whereabouts, everything could have been different. But he didn't. He was too busy creating his intellectual legacy to notice his real legacy walking out the door. The temple job started perfectly. Jack and his two accomplices climbed over the wall under the cover of darkness. They moved silently through the corridors, their hearts pounding with excitement and fear. The main hall was filled with offerings, more wealth than they had ever seen in one place. For a moment, they just stood there, amazed by their luck. Jack felt a strange mix of emotions: pride that he had proven himself capable of such a daring crime, excitement about the money they were about to steal, and somewhere deep inside, a tiny voice of shame that he tried his best to ignore. They worked quickly, stuffing their bags with the most valuable items they could find: coins, jewelry, small statues made of precious metals. Everything was going perfectly. And then they heard footsteps. The temple guard, an elderly man who had served the temple faithfully for decades, was making his nightly rounds. He had heard suspicious noises and came to investigate. What happened next changed everything. In their panic to escape, Jack's accomplices pushed over a large bronze lamp. The crash echoed through the temple like thunder. The guard immediately knew something was wrong and began shouting for help. Within minutes, other guards arrived. The temple complex was surrounded. There was no escape. Jack, who had spent his entire life having everything handed to him, who had never faced real consequences for any of his actions, was suddenly trapped in the most terrifying situation of his life. The guards caught all three thieves easily. These weren't master criminals. They were just desperate young men who had made catastrophic choices. And as they were dragged away in chains, Jack realized something that made his blood run cold. This wasn't just about getting arrested. This was about what would happen when people found out who he was: Master Hanks' son, the child of the most respected man in the kingdom, caught stealing from a temple. The scandal wouldn't just destroy Jack, it would destroy his entire family. But here's the most tragic part. As Jack sat in the jail cell that night, waiting to be presented to the king in the morning, he wasn't thinking about the shame he was about to bring on his family. He was thinking about whether his father would finally pay attention to him. Even facing complete disgrace, part of Jack was almost glad that his father would finally have to acknowledge his existence. Take a moment and think about this. Have you ever ignored someone so completely that they started making bad choices just to get your attention? Have you ever been so busy that you missed the warning signs of someone's pain? Drop a broken heart emoji if you've ever felt ignored by someone you love, or if you realize you might be ignoring someone who needs you. Part 4. The Moment of Reckoning. The next morning brought the most humiliating day in Master Hanks's entire life. Picture the scene. The royal court, filled with nobles, ministers, advisors, and curious onlookers. Everyone who mattered in the kingdom was there. Master Hanks was at home, completely unaware of what was about to happen. He had woken up as usual, had his morning tea, and settled into his study to work on his latest manuscript. He didn't even know that Jack hadn't come home the night before. Then came the knock on the door that would change everything. A royal messenger, dressed in official colors, with a proclamation that made Master Hanks's world collapse in an instant. Master Hanks, by order of His Majesty, you are summoned to the royal court immediately. Your son has been arrested for theft from the sacred temple. For a moment, Master Hanks couldn't process what he was hearing. His son? Arrested? Theft? Temple? It was impossible. There had to be some mistake. But as the reality sank in, Master Hanks felt something he had never experienced before. Pure, overwhelming shame. Not just sadness, not just disappointment. Shame so deep it felt like his soul was being crushed. Everything he had built, every relationship he had cultivated, every bit of respect he had earned over decades of brilliant work was about to be destroyed by his son's actions. And the worst part? He knew it was his fault. Not legally, not directly, but in the deepest way possible, he knew that his neglect had created this disaster. The walk to the royal court was the longest of Master Hanks's life. Every person he passed on the street seemed to stare at him with judgment. Every whisper felt like an accusation. By the time he arrived at the palace, news of Jack's arrest had spread throughout the city. The great Master Hanks's son was a common thief. When Master Hanks entered the courtroom, the atmosphere was electric with scandal. This was the biggest news anyone could remember. The fall of a legend was happening in real time. There was Jack, standing in chains between his two accomplices, looking smaller and more pathetic than Master Hanks had ever seen him. For the first time in years, father and son made direct eye contact. And in that moment, Master Hanks saw something that broke his heart. His son wasn't looking at him with anger or defiance. He was looking at him with hope. Even in chains, even facing disgrace, Jack was hoping his father would save him. The king's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Master Hanks, is this young man your son?" "Yes, Your Majesty." "Are you aware of what he has done?" "I am now, Your Majesty." "And what do you have to say about raising a son who steals from temples?" This was the moment of truth. Master Hanks could feel hundreds of eyes on him, waiting to see how the great philosopher would handle his personal failure. He could have made excuses. He could have blamed his son's friends, or his wife's parenting, or society's influence. But Master Hanks, for all his faults, was not a man who ran from truth. "Your Majesty, I have failed as a father. I was so consumed with my work that I neglected my most important responsibility. This crime is a result of my negligence." The court was stunned. Here was the most respected man in the kingdom taking full responsibility for his son's actions. But the king wasn't finished. "Master Hanks, you have always refused my offers to serve as my advisor. You said you were too principled to engage in politics. You claimed that your integrity was more important than power or wealth." "Yes, Your Majesty." "And yet your son steals from temples. Where is your integrity now?" The question hung in the air like a death sentence. Master Hanks had no answer. How do you defend principles you failed to pass on to your own child? Here's what I want you to understand. This moment right here is where success becomes meaningless. All of Master Hanks's achievements, all his knowledge, all his reputation meant nothing because he had failed at the most basic human responsibility, being a good father. Think about your own life. What would happen if your most private failures became public? What would people discover about how you treat the people closest to you? Part 5. The Price of Pride. What happened next will show you exactly how pride destroys everything we care about. The king leaned forward on his throne, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Master Hanks, I will give you a choice. Your son has committed a serious crime. The punishment for temple theft is severe." Master Hanks held his breath. "However, because of the respect I have held for you over the years, I am willing to show mercy. But there is a condition." "What condition, Your Majesty?" "You must publicly apologize to me and to this court for your failure as a father. You must acknowledge that all your wisdom was worthless because you could not guide your own son. You must humble yourself completely before everyone here." The court was silent. Everyone understood what was being asked. Master Hanks had spent his entire life building a reputation for uncompromising principles. He had turned down wealth and power to maintain his integrity. He had never bowed to anyone. And now, he was being asked to destroy his dignity publicly to save his son. For Master Hanks, this was worse than death. His reputation was everything to him. His image as a principled philosopher was his entire identity. But looking at Jack, seeing his son's desperate hope, Master Hanks realized something devastating. His pride had already cost him his son's respect and love. Was he really going to let it cost Jack his freedom too? This is where we see the true measure of a person, folks. When everything you care about is on the line, what do you choose? Master Hanks looked around the court, at the nobles who had once hung on his every word, at the scholars who had considered him their intellectual superior, at the citizens who had viewed him as a moral authority. All of them were waiting to see him fall. And then Master Hanks did something that shocked everyone, including himself. He got on his knees. In front of the entire royal court, the great Master Hanks knelt down and spoke words that destroyed his reputation forever. "Your Majesty, I humbly apologize for my failure as a father. I acknowledge that all my knowledge was meaningless because I could not teach my own son right from wrong. I beg your mercy for his crime, which is ultimately my crime." The silence in the court was deafening. Jack stared at his father in amazement. For the first time in his life, he saw his father choose him over everything else. But the damage was done. Master Hanks had saved his son, but he had destroyed himself. The king, satisfied with the humiliation, released Jack with a warning. But the real punishment was just beginning. As Master Hanks left the court that day, he could hear the whispers following him. "There goes the great philosopher who couldn't raise his own son. Look at the moral teacher whose child is a criminal. So much for his wisdom and principles." Within hours, the story had spread throughout the kingdom. Master Hanks, the man who had been worshipped for his integrity, was now a laughingstock. But the worst part wasn't the professional destruction. The worst part was the guilt. Master Hanks finally understood what his neglect had cost. Not just his reputation, but his son's entire future. He had created the very problem he had been forced to solve. And that realization began eating him alive from the inside. This is where the story gets even more heartbreaking, because what Master Hanks didn't know was that his sacrifice to save Jack was meaningless. Jack hadn't learned anything from this experience. Comment sacrifice if you've ever sacrificed something important to save someone who didn't appreciate it. Part 6. The Spiral of Destruction. After the humiliation in court, Master Hanks's life became a living nightmare. The man who had once been invited to every important gathering was now avoided like a plague carrier. Former friends crossed the street to avoid talking to him. Students who had once competed for his attention now pretended not to recognize him. But the social rejection was nothing compared to what was happening at home. Jack had returned from his near imprisonment, but instead of being grateful for his father's sacrifice, instead of learning from his mistake, he was angry. Angry that he had been caught. Angry that his reputation was ruined. Angry that his criminal friends now saw him as a liability. He blamed everyone except himself. And worst of all, he blamed his father for not saving him sooner, for not preventing the humiliation in the first place. Master Hanks watched in horror as his son, instead of reforming, became even more reckless. Jack's stealing didn't stop. It got worse. Now he was stealing from his own home. Master Hanks's precious books, manuscripts he had spent years writing, rare texts he had collected over decades. Jack would take them and sell them for gambling money. One morning, Master Hanks went to his library and found entire shelves empty. "Jack, where are my books?" His son didn't even bother to lie convincingly. "I sold them. We needed money." "Those books were priceless. I spent my entire life collecting them." "Well, maybe if you had spent your life earning money instead of just collecting useless books, we wouldn't be in this situation." Master Hanks felt his heart breaking in real time. This was his son, the child he had sacrificed everything to save, and Jack was treating him like an enemy. But it got worse. The stress of losing his reputation, combined with the daily heartbreak of watching his son's continued self-destruction, began taking a physical toll on Master Hanks. He stopped eating properly. He couldn't sleep. His health began failing rapidly. And as he got weaker, Jack became bolder in his disrespect and theft. The books weren't enough anymore. Jack started taking furniture, selling his mother's jewelry, even taking food from their meager supplies to trade for alcohol and gambling stakes. Master Hanks's wife, watching her husband dying slowly from grief and stress, begged Jack to stop. "Your father sacrificed everything for you. The least you can do is show some respect." But Jack had learned a terrible lesson from his experience. He had concluded that trying to be good, trying to be responsible, trying to be respectable was pointless because life was unfair anyway. "Look where Father's wisdom got him," Jack would say, "dead and forgotten. At least I'm having fun while I'm alive." The stealing escalated. Jack started targeting their own neighbors, people who had known him since childhood. He robbed the baker who had given him free bread as a child. He stole from the doctor who had treated his childhood illnesses for free. He even took money from the temple donation box, the same temple where his crime spree had started. Each theft made him bolder, more reckless, more confident that there were no real consequences for his actions. But there are always consequences. The community that had once respected the family now saw them as a source of crime and shame. People started avoiding their street. Shopkeepers watched Jack carefully whenever he entered their stores. Former family friends warned their children to stay away from Jack. The isolation was complete, and Jack's mother, watching her son destroy not just his own life, but the last remnants of their family's dignity, began to give up hope. She stopped eating regularly, giving most of their meager food to Jack. She stopped taking care of herself, focusing all her energy on trying to save a son who didn't want to be saved. She stopped sleeping, staying awake at night, worrying about what crime Jack might commit next. Slowly, deliberately, she was dying of a broken heart. But the final blow came when Jack did something that crossed the last line of human decency. Part 7. The Point of No Return. What Jack did next will show you exactly how selfishness destroys everything it touches. The family had been surviving on the money Jack's mother made from selling their last possessions. She had been carefully rationing every coin, making sure they could afford basic food for as long as possible. She kept their remaining money hidden in a small cloth bag, thinking Jack didn't know about it. But Jack had been watching, and when his gambling debts became urgent, when his criminal friends started threatening him for money he owed, he made a choice that would haunt him forever. He stole his own mother's survival money, not just some of it, all of it. The money she had saved by selling her wedding jewelry, her mother's heirloom dishes, her husband's precious writing instruments. Jack took everything while his mother slept and gambled it away in a single night. When his mother discovered the theft, she didn't scream at him. She didn't curse him. She didn't throw him out of the house. She just looked at him with such profound sadness that Jack actually felt ashamed for a moment. "Son," she said quietly, "that was our food money for the next month. How will we eat?" Jack's response revealed how completely he had lost his humanity. "Figure it out. I had debts to pay." "But Jack, we'll starve." "Then get more money. Sell something else." "There's nothing left to sell, son. We've sold everything." Jack shrugged. "Not my problem." That night, Jack didn't come home. He was out celebrating his gambling win with the criminal friends who mattered more to him than his own family. His mother sat alone in their empty house, surrounded by bare walls where furniture and artwork used to hang, holding Master Hank's book, the only valuable thing Jack hadn't stolen yet. And she made a decision that would end everything. She decided to sell the book. Master Hank's final gift to his son, his masterpiece, his love letter to Jack, his attempt at redemption. She was going to sell it to buy food. But when she took it to the book merchants, they all said the same thing. "We can't sell this. Master Hank's reputation is ruined. Nobody wants books by a man who raised a criminal son." The book that contained the secrets to unlimited success was literally worthless because the author's personal failure had destroyed his credibility. So Jack's mother returned home with the unsellable book and no money. She sat in her empty house for 3 days without eating, holding her husband's final work, waiting for her son to come home. On the 4th day, Jack returned, expecting to find food prepared for him as usual. Instead, he found his mother collapsed on the floor, the book still clutched in her arms. She had died of starvation and heartbreak. Jack stood over his mother's body, and for the first time in years, he felt the full weight of what his choices had created. He had killed his own mother. Not with violence, but with selfishness. This is the moment when Jack finally understood what he had lost. But understanding came too late. Part 8. The cruel irony of fate. Now comes the part of the story that will either make you believe in divine justice or convince you that life is randomly cruel. Jack buried his mother with money borrowed from the same criminals who had helped destroy his life. Even in death, his family was connected to crime and shame. After the funeral, Jack found himself completely alone for the first time in his life. No parents to disappoint, no home to return to, no reputation to uphold or destroy. Just him and the book his father had written, the book he had never bothered to read. Standing in the empty house where his family had once lived, Jack picked up his father's final work and really looked at it for the first time. The cover was worn from his mother's desperate hands during her final days. The pages were filled with his father's careful handwriting, every word chosen with precision and love. And for the first time, Jack wondered, what if this book actually contained something valuable? He tried to read it, but the words were too complex, the concepts too advanced for someone who had spent his youth avoiding education. Frustrated and curious, he took the book to Uncle Kevin, an elderly neighbor who had known the family for years. "Uncle Kevin, can you tell me what this book is about?" The old man's eyes widened when he saw the book. "Jack, where did you get this?" "My father wrote it before he died." Uncle Kevin opened the book and began reading. As his eyes moved across the pages, his expression changed from curiosity to amazement to absolute shock. "Jack, do you have any idea what this is?" "It's just one of my father's books." "This isn't just a book. This is incredible. Your father has written down formulas here that could make someone incredibly wealthy. Strategies for success that I've never seen before. Philosophical insights that could change a person's entire life." Jack felt a strange stirring in his chest. "What do you mean?" "I mean, this book can teach someone how to become successful beyond their wildest dreams. But Jack, these concepts are very advanced. To understand them fully, you would need years of study." Years of study. The years Jack had wasted gambling and stealing. "Can you teach me?" Jack asked desperately. Uncle Kevin looked at him sadly. "Jack, I'm too old, and you're too far behind. Learning what's in this book would require starting with basic education and working up to advanced philosophy. It would take dedication, discipline, and time that you may not have." That night, Jack sat alone with the book, understanding for the first time what he had inherited. His father hadn't left him money, because money can be stolen, spent, or lost. His father had left him something infinitely more valuable: the knowledge to create unlimited wealth, success, and happiness. But there was a cruel irony. Jack couldn't access this treasure because he lacked the basic education to understand it. He was like a man dying of thirst while sitting next to a well, unable to draw water because he had never learned how to use the rope. The solution to every problem he would ever face was literally in his hands, but it might as well have been written in a foreign language. This is when Jack made a decision that would define the rest of his life. He decided to leave the kingdom and find someone who could teach him to understand his father's book. But the king's previous punishment still stood. Jack was banned from the kingdom. If he stayed and was caught, he would be executed. If he left, he might never find anyone qualified to teach him what he needed to know. Either way, he was trapped by the consequences of his past choices. So Jack packed the book in a simple bag and began walking toward the kingdom's border, not knowing if he would ever return, not knowing if he would ever unlock the treasure his father had left him. As he walked away from everything he had ever known, Jack finally understood the full scope of his tragedy. He had destroyed his relationship with the one person who could have taught him everything. He had wasted the years when learning would have been easiest. He had killed the mother who had tried to save him. And now he was carrying infinite wisdom that he might never be able to access.
But here's the question that will determine the rest of Jack's life. Is it ever too late to change? Can someone who has lost everything still find redemption? Comment, "Redemption possible," if you believe people can change no matter how far they've fallen. Or, "Too late," if you think some mistakes are permanent. Part 9. The Deepest Truth Revealed. Now I'm going to tell you what this story really means and why it matters to your life today. Jack's journey represents something that's happening to millions of people right now, in this moment, as you're watching this video. There are parents all over the world who are so focused on building successful careers that they're losing their children to bad influences. There are children who have access to incredible wisdom and opportunity but can't recognize its value because they've never been taught to appreciate learning. There are families falling apart not because they don't love each other, but because they don't know how to prioritize what matters most. Master Hanks represents every person who has ever thought that professional success could substitute for personal relationships. Jack represents every young person who has ever rejected wisdom because it seemed less exciting than immediate pleasure. And the book, that precious, unreadable book, represents all the opportunities, all the wisdom, all the love that surrounds us every day, but that we can't access because we haven't prepared ourselves to receive it. But here's what makes this story even more relevant to your life. Right now, you have people in your life who need your attention. Not tomorrow, not next week, not when your current project is finished. Now, you have opportunities to build relationships, to learn valuable skills, to make choices that will determine your future happiness. And you have access to wisdom through books, through mentors, through experiences that could transform your life if you're willing to put in the effort to understand it. The question is, what are you going to do with what you have? Are you going to be like Master Hanks, so focused on external achievements that you miss the most important relationships in your life? Are you going to be like Jack, rejecting valuable opportunities because they require effort and discipline? Or are you going to learn from their tragedy and write a different story? Here's what Master Hanks should have done. Every day he should have spent at least 1 hour with his son, not teaching, not lecturing, just connecting as a human being. He should have asked Jack about his thoughts, his dreams, his fears, his day. He should have shared his own struggles and victories, making himself real and approachable, rather than distant and perfect. He should have taught Jack gradually, patiently, making learning enjoyable rather than intimidating. Most importantly, he should have shown Jack that love is more important than achievement, that relationships matter more than reputation. Here's what Jack should have done. He should have recognized that his father's distance wasn't rejection, it was misguided prioritization. He should have valued education as the key to freedom, rather than seeing it as boring obligation. He should have chosen friends who challenged him to grow, rather than friends who enabled his worst impulses. He should have understood that his actions affected not just himself, but everyone who loved him. Most importantly, he should have communicated with his parents about his feelings, instead of acting out destructively. But here's the real truth that makes this story so powerful. Both Master Hanks and Jack were trying to meet the same need, the need to feel important, to matter, to leave a mark on the world. Master Hanks thought importance came from external recognition and achievement. Jack thought importance came from rebellion and excitement. Both were wrong. Real importance comes from the positive impact you have on the people closest to you. Real success is measured not by what you accomplish, but by how much love you give and receive. Real legacy is not what people say about you after you're gone. It's how much better you made the lives of people who trusted you with their hearts. Now let me ask you some questions that might change your life. Who in your life needs more of your attention right now? What valuable opportunities are you ignoring because they seem difficult or boring? What wisdom is available to you that you haven't taken the time to understand? What relationships are you neglecting while pursuing goals that won't matter in 10 years? If you died tomorrow, would the people closest to you feel loved and valued by you? If your children were asked to describe what you care about most, what would they say? These aren't comfortable questions, but they're necessary questions. Because the tragedy of Master Hanks and Jack doesn't have to be your tragedy. You still have time to write a different ending. Comment and telling me what's one relationship you're going to prioritize differently after hearing this story. Part 10. Your life-changing moment. Right now, at this exact moment, you have a choice that will determine the trajectory of your entire future. You can close this video and go back to whatever you were doing before, treating this as just another story, just another piece of content to consume and forget. Or you can let this story change you. You can use Master Hank's tragedy as a wake-up call for your own life. You can learn from Jack's mistakes and make better choices with the opportunities you have right now. Here's what I want you to do immediately after this video ends. First, think of one person in your life who has been trying to get your attention, who needs more of your time and love than you've been giving them. Maybe it's your child who keeps trying to show you things while you're on your phone. Maybe it's your spouse who has been hinting that you work too much. Maybe it's your parent who calls more often than you answer. Maybe it's a friend who has been reaching out, but you've been too busy to really connect. Whoever it is, go to them today. Not tomorrow, not next week. Today. Have a real conversation. Put away all distractions. Look them in the eyes. Listen to what they're really saying. Tell them they matter to you. Tell them you've been prioritizing the wrong things. Tell them you want to be more present in their life. Second, identify one area of knowledge or skill that you've been avoiding because it seems difficult or time-consuming. Maybe it's learning a language that would help your career. Maybe it's reading books that could expand your understanding of the world. Maybe it's developing a talent that you've always been interested in but never pursued. Whatever it is, start today. Not with a massive commitment, just with one small step. Remember, Jack had the greatest treasure in the world, but couldn't access it because he had never prepared himself to receive it. Don't let that be your story. Third, take an honest look at your current priorities. What are you spending most of your time and energy on? Is it really the most important thing in your life? Will it matter in 20 years? Will it help you build the relationships and create the impact you really want? If the answer is no, then you need to make some changes. Because here's the truth that Master Hanks learned too late. Success without meaningful relationships is just decorated loneliness. Achievement without love is just impressive emptiness. Knowledge without wisdom is just complicated ignorance. And wisdom without application is just sophisticated failure. Your life is not a rehearsal. This isn't practice. This is the real thing, happening right now. And you can't get these moments back. The person who needs your attention won't wait forever. The opportunities to learn and grow won't stay available indefinitely. The chance to build something meaningful with the people you love is happening now, in this season of your life. Don't waste it. Don't be Master Hanks, so focused on building a reputation that you forget to build relationships. Don't be Jack, so distracted by immediate pleasures that you miss life-changing opportunities. Be the person who learns from their story and writes a better one. If this message has impacted you, if you're ready to make real changes in your life, then subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell, because I'm going to keep sharing stories that challenge you to live better, love deeper, and leave a legacy worth having. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. You might just save their family. And comment below with one specific action you're going to take because of what you learned today. Your story doesn't have to end like theirs. but only if you choose to write it differently.